following a coat of clear gloss where the decals were going to go. All the decals have been installed, and I came back once they were dry for about a day, came back with more gloss and covered over them and tried to get into the edges in all directions just to try and fill up that gap or that change in elevation with the gloss coat, and I found that that really does help to hide the edge of the decal. Once the locomotive is weathered and totally painted, it'll get dull coat over the whole thing, so those areas of glossiness will go away. So my next step here will be to fade, and again, these locomotives were painted in the 60s, and so I'm modeling 74, and for whatever reason I don't think the blue that they were using didn't seem to do well. It must have had some serious UV degradation or something. They didn't look very good after not that many years, so there was a significant amount of fading. On 5824 here, I'm going to use a photo I found online to actually mimic the fade pattern. The photo is probably in the 80s, so I'll maybe scale it back a little bit so it's not as aggressively weathered to reflect a slightly newer paint job. But so what I'll do is I'll mix up a batch of the Blue Angels blue and flat black to try and match exactly the color that I've painted here, and then I'll add in just a little bit of white gradually until I get a reasonable faded lighter blue, because that's what they seem to fade to according to the pictures. So we'll get started. Alright, I completed the fading, and as I suspected, the little bit of overspray I had on the front end of the sill under the battery boxes with a little bit of weathering and streaking is no longer evident, so I think that'll be fine. And this will, I need to wait till this coat cures for probably a couple days before I put in the rust and other weathering coat, but there's the base fading coat. Deliberately I'm going to try not to do too much weathering over the ACI plate because that would have been relatively newly installed. So also pulled the silicone off of the headlights. It worked okay, not quite as well as I had hoped, but I think it'll be fine. The headlights will be completely visible, but there's, if you look real close, you probably can't see on the camera, but there's just a little bit of, not a crisp edge, but I think it'll be acceptable. And I did install the missing grab irons that once the decals were installed on the end. I need to hit them again with another coat of paint, but I'll just do that with a brush. And I did the everything with an airbrush except for the little streaks, but I did it with some relatively I did it with the paint out of the airbrush cup, so it was well thinned to be able to kind of do some of that streaking, and again that'll get some additional weathering and truck grime. I also hit the tops of the trucks, so I sprayed only on a downward angle with the fade, and then I might come in with weathering and do some rusty and darker colors in a different direction, but I figured that would highlight the trucks from the top, which is the way you're going to view it the most. And while I had the airbrush full, I also shot the air tanks to cover the bronze tubing or piping that I had modeled as well. So that'll get knocked down from being bright blue with the next coat of weathering. So, all right, a little at a time. A little that is the downfall of enamels, is that you've got to give them a decent amount of time to dry between coats. So probably won't be another couple days till I do the final weathering coat, and then that I'll let dry quite a while before I do the final dull coat. But we're gaining on it, and after that then I've got railings to add. I've got the best I can tell, this is a from the photo I'm looking at, it's a Nathan M5 or M5R2, probably with the two reversed horns. That goes in up on the nose up here. I ordered a bell for the nose, and it was broken. I tried to solder it and turned it into a puddle of back into castable material. So I guess I should have used CA on that, but I'll just order another few because I'll probably have more C&O. I definitely have two C&O locomotives. That'll take a nose bell, so I will at least order two of those. I've got the high-tech details number 6034 to do MU cables and hoses. So that will follow, and then, like I said, railings. So we are gaining on the GP7 5824. As noted previously, the decoder install is done. Headlights are connected, ground lights are connected, iPhone 4 speaker installed, and a new Northwest Short Lines motor. So we're gaining on it. Probably another week or so of painting and then adding the railings, and this guy will be in revenue service. I'm not going to put the shell all the way onto the frame just because it still has not cured all the way, but I've just rested it on there temporarily. So the fuel tank's going to look a little odd simply because more of the fuel tank is visible now than it will be once the sill covers it, so I think that'll be okay. This locomotive, according to the photos I have, definitely did have a blue fuel tank, and it was somewhat faded, so I tried to capture that. The air tanks were clearly painted enchantment blue, but were faded also, so that's what I've replicated here. I have come in and added some of the rust and dirt in addition to or on top of the fading, working primarily from photos, and that is a blend, or that color is a blend of flat black, I think earth brown, and a little bit of dark gray, which seemed to be about the right color to match what was in the photos. Tried to drag that down over the sills again for the photos. Battery boxes, the vents were definitely they were all faded, but the vents definitely had a darker brown tone to them. And again, tried to leave the area with the ACI label a little clean because that's how it is in the photo, and that would have been recently applied. And I put a Nathan 5-chime horn, a set of tweezers here, so shot that with a little bit of flat black, but also hit it with some of that rust and dirt mixture. So that'll get placed on the nose, the short hood. Did a little bit of black around the stacks. Didn't do it as hard as I've done it on some other locomotives. Again, did some streaking, and you can see some areas on the cab where the original blue is still showing through. Most of it, though, is faded, and some of it in the middle is starting to patina with a little bit of rust. Did a touch of fading along the various spots on the long hood. So now we get to, once this cures up, we can start putting handrails on. I can put the horn on, and I can't forget, I want to definitely put some clear plastic that I'll attach from the inside, so I may actually want to do that before I do the handrails, but obviously you have to wait until after I've dull coated the whole model. So I guess the next step probably would actually be to dull coat, so that means I should probably let this enamel cure for a decent amount of time before I try and dull coat the whole thing, specifically because I'm using acrylic dull coat over top. So coming along. Oh, I also hit the trucks with some of the dirt. I did the faded blue from the top, and I did some of the dirt from the bottom. I don't know if that's going to work out. What I'm trying to do is create some contrast in there, because as we've discussed before, trucks are just really hard to see. So doing the top side's light and the underside's dark should help to maximize that contrast. And obviously with the ground lights on this locomotive, that should also illuminate the trucks a little bit better as well. So we're coming along. I will probably post this at this point, just so everybody doesn't have to wait another couple of weeks till this cures up. And I'll get prepped to do handrails, and I'll be able to slide the side frames on, and it'll start looking like a locomotive. More to follow.